Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. I haven't done one of these videos in a while where it's just me and the camera, just me talking to the camera. I don't have to look at some fucking idiot who's just talking whatever bullshit he wants to spew on the internet up in the corner while I'm just sitting down there just, what the fuck are you talking about? I'm not doing that this time. Today I'm actually presenting some of my own ideas for once, which is exciting. And today basically what I wanted to talk about is how the benevolent universe premise can help you better respond, or it improves your emotional state when bad events happen, when some like bad luck happens, or it sort of in general improves your view of bad situations just in general. Like, you don't expect them, you don't respond to them as badly. And I wanted to go in depth a little about that. The context of me thinking about this is after I had this like very minor car accident. Nothing super bad really happened. And I almost completely blew it off right afterward. It was the emotional state that I was in was completely different than how I would have been in a long time ago. Now, obviously, those emotions are not something that you can repress at any time, but in general, it's good to see that as my premises grow, as I integrate the benevolent universe premise, it really changes my outlook on these bad events when a bad event happens. So basically, I guess the benevolent universe premise is the general idea that the sort of bad things that happen in life, they're not relevant. They're not the essential of what life is. It's this sort of idea that if I take the right actions, I can achieve happiness. Happiness is possible for me. Good is possible for me. And the essential of life is achievement. It's happiness. And this is contrasted, obviously, with the malevolent universe premise, which is basically the idea that life is suffering. There's no real possibility for achievement in this world. The essentials of life are just bad event after bad event. It's just a string of very bad events. And this used to be very much so my view. It's common with religious people because they sort of have this view that life is suffering, that your ultimate goal is to do well in this life so you can escape this life eventually and achieve happiness in heaven after this life, because in this world there's only suffering. You can't achieve anything in this world. And that's sort of one thing that objectivism really challenged in me, and it sort of replaced this malevolent universe premise over time. Obviously it's a struggle. It's still like you don't overnight just snap and then you like disintegrated your malevolent universe premise and then integrated your benevolent universe premise. But over time, I've noticed that I've been integrating this benevolent universe premise a lot more over time, and getting rid of that malevolent universe premise from my days of religion. And I thought that one really good example of that is how I respond to bad events, how I respond to bad things happening in life. Because here's the thing. Regardless of what you view about the world, regardless of what happens, regardless of what view you have, there's going to be bad things that happen in life. There's going to be occasions where you feel pain. But what someone with the malevolent universe premise does, it's sort of a verification for them. It's like, yeah, I expected this. This is exactly what I expected to happen. Like, and it's like just over and over, and then they focus heavily on those things. They focus heavily on those bad things when they come up. But the person with the benevolent universe premise just shrugs them off. It can only cut so deep. Sure, they feel emotions at the time, they feel bad about it at the time, but it's not as essential to them. It's not as like deeply penetrating to them as it is for the person with the malevolent universe premise. Because the people with the malevolent universe premise, they let these bad events determine their outlook on the world. They let these events determine how they view the world, how they view life, and their general emotional state. While the person with a benevolent universe premise, they feel bad, obviously, but it doesn't affect them overall. It's not essential. And this is an understanding that's very, very useful. So to kind of like formalize and simplify this realization, we can just look one by one at how people with a benevolent universe respond to different events and compare that to how people with a malevolent universe premise respond to different events. Because, well, the benevolent universe people view good events that happen in life, just generally good events. I'm not going to define necessarily what it would mean to be for a good event to be, because that's not the essential of what this video is about. I could go into that. I guess it's like something that happens in life that serves your values, or that the achievement of values. That'd be an example. Anything that is good for your life that occurs in life. That would be what I would consider a good event. So what happens when someone with a benevolent universe premise has a good event? They fully embrace it. They view this as the essential of life, and they're able to fully appreciate the good that they've achieved. They're able to fully appreciate the values that they've achieved, and they view it as this sort of continual process as well. Like, okay, I achieved this now, and then they more motivates them to continue living and continue acting in life, because they know that this is the essential. So if I keep living, if I keep doing these things, this will keep coming up over time, over and over again. Now, what happens when someone with a benevolent universe premise has a bad event happen in their life? Well, I've kind of already explained this. They view it as non-essential. They can basically ignore it. Obviously, there's generally like going to be a negative emotion, or not negative emotion, like a uncomfortable emotion that they feel, but this is not the essential to them. So that emotion is obviously, it's not going to be as intense as what would happen if you viewed that as an essential thing in your life. So you can view it as essential, as non-essential to your life. You can view that bad event, that value destroying event, as something that's not that important. It's not relevant to life, and you can just ignore it basically. Now, it's one thing I want to be clear about is it's dangerous to think that, oh, I should feel this way, so now I'm going to suppress my emotions, suppress my feeling bad about this, because I want to have a benevolent universe premise. So like, if I feel bad about this, that means I don't have a benevolent universe premise, and I should just suppress this emotion. This isn't an emotion that I should feel. No, that's wrong. Don't think like that. Feel the emotion, but over time you can look and see where that emotion stems from, and don't necessarily just assume that it's from a malevolent universe premise either. Like there's all sorts of sources for your emotions, and if it does stem from this idea that life is suffering and this is just part of life and this is what life essentially is, and you get bent out of shape after something bad happens because of that and let it affect your overall view of life, sure, that's something to correct over time, but don't suppress the emotion. Let it fully express itself and identify it, and try to understand where it comes from, so that you can fix whatever premises you hold that are leading to a bad emotional state. Or it might not even be a bad emotional state, because when bad things happen, it's perfectly fine to feel bad about those things. But what I'm generally arguing here is that the benevolent universe premise has a impact on the comfort of those emotions that you feel in those circumstances. So let's move on to the next one. What happens when someone with a malevolent universe premise has a bad event happen to them? Well, similarly to how someone with a benevolent universe premise views good events as essential, someone with a malevolent universe premise views these bad events as equally essential, and they use this as verification to continue holding the malevolent universe premise. They're like, they view this pain as something that's just going to repeat more and more in life, and this demotivates them. It makes them not want to continue achieving things. It makes them not want to continue pursuing things, because continuing life, continuing action, continuing pursuit is only going to lead to more pain. It's only going to lead to more suffering, because that's what they view as the essential of what life is. And hey, this bad event just happened. It just proved it even further to me that this is all that life is about, that this is the essential of life. So that's obviously a way worse way to respond to these things. That's a way worse way to deal with a bad event mentally, to how you think about that event. So that's obviously a way more destructive way to think about that event. And I guess the final thing is, what happens when someone with a malevolent universe premise has a good event happen to them? Well, they view that as non-essential. And like someone with a benevolent universe premise who ignores the non-essential, because that's what we tend to do. If we view something as non-essential, we have a tendency to ignore it. They generally ignore this good event. They don't let it affect their outlook on life, because it's not essential. It's not the essential of life. And it really stifles your ability to fully embrace those emotions and fully feel those emotions, and use this and use this good event as a motivation to keep pursuing life, keep pursuing happiness. So yeah, this is obviously a way worse way to respond as well to a good event happening in life. And this actually has parallels in aesthetics when it comes to the sense of life of an artist. An artist who has essentially in romantic art, I guess, you omit the non-essential and emphasize the essential. So in art, what happens is someone with a benevolent view of the world, someone with a benevolent universe premise, they're going to accentuate the good events. They're going to point out the good events. Then they're going to widely just say these bad events, they don't matter, and ignore them, and oftentimes omit them. Now there's certainly times where like a bad thing will happen, but that's more. But the purpose of that in a benevolent art is to show the character overcoming that, and it has a feeling of hope throughout it, because it has this feeling of achievement throughout it. But a malevolent form of art is just this character. It's like in Crime and Punishment, like the character just has constant bad events happening to them, and their life just gets destroyed by the world, and they omit the good. They omit good events because those good events, they don't view them as essential, and that's sort of how the malevolent universe premise and benevolent universe premise express themselves in artwork. And if you have a malevolent view of life, you're more likely to enjoy this malevolent form of art, because it verifies your view of life. And if you have a benevolent universe premise, you're going to be more likely to enjoy benevolent art. I mean, this is sort of obvious by the terms literally being the same, but and them stemming from each other. But that's the sort of art you're going to enjoy because it verifies your worldview. And the art is sort of how you view the world, and what is omitted is already viewed by you as non-essential and largely ignored. But anyways, back to the main point about how you respond to bad events. I actually used to have this view that I would call it pessimism, but it's basically the malevolent universe premise. But I viewed that as more practical. I viewed that as far more rational, because basically, if you're pessimist, if you always expect the worst, if you always expect the worst thing to happen, you're never going to be disappointed. If a good thing happens, it's like, oh, this is a pleasant surprise. And if a bad thing's happened, well, at least you're not surprised. At least you saw it coming. But as I explained earlier, as if you understood what I've been saying so far, you can see why this is a very damaging premise overall. Sure, you expect the bad things when it happens, but you also dwell on those things. And when you think about them long term, rather than just when that event occurs and what your initial feeling is, when you think about it long term, you stifle your ability to feel happiness and feel motivation in life, because you view the good events as not essential. You view them as you view more action as just something that's going to lead to pain, and you can't fully embrace the good because you can't use good events, you can't use achievement of values as something to motivate you further and to continue living. So overall, this is generally not a very good view of life. This is not the malevolent universe premise. The expecting the worst out of everything is not a good view of life. And even if a bad thing happens, you dwell on it, you focus on it, you're unable to move past it, you just can't ignore it like somebody who holds the benevolent universe premise can. So sure, maybe you expect the bad to happen, and maybe you won't ever be surprised, but who cares? That's not what's important. Surprise doesn't really matter here. It's so non-essential in this wider context. Sure, bad events are going to be surprising, even for someone with a benevolent universe premise. It's not something that they're going to expect. But is expectation the standard here? I don't think it is. I think the standard properly here should be what is actually going to benefit your life in the long run. And obviously, a benevolent universe premise is going to benefit your life in the long run. Being generally optimistic. Optimism, I don't necessarily agree with in general, but if we compare benevolent universe to, and the benevolent malevolent universe dichotomy to the optimist and pessimist dichotomy, you can kind of see where it fits in. Although I do have problems with optimism because optimism can often be irrational. But in general, you should have a good outlook on life. Don't expect the negative. Expect the good in life. Expect life to be good, and omit the negative. Ignore the bad events, and that's sort of what holding a benevolent universe can do for you. And it is very beneficial. So yeah, I think that is all I have to say for today. Thank you all for watching, and I hope to see you all in the next video. Peace. I love doing that.